Right now, the Red Sox are kind of in a funny place. They're pretty good, and they're still technically in the wild card race, 4 games out, but they're not the Red Sox of Big Papi and Manny and that crowd.
Inside Scoop time with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal, who just put out an article in The Athletic about the Padres. You can call it turnaround season because they're at least on a pathway to the playoffs right now. Ken, great to have you back on. And I'll let you kind of lay out what you wrote about and how it came about.
Basically, what I wrote, Scott, is that this is, in my opinion, A.J. Preller's best job as general manager, maybe his best team. Now, that point can be argued. Last year's team was so good, you forget the names that were on it. Juan Soto, of course, Josh Hader, Seth Lugo, who shut out the Yankees last night, Michael Wacha, and others. And those guys, Blake Snell's another one, all gone this year, but yet they are a better team than they were last year. Mike Schilt has replaced Bob Melvin as manager. And one of the reasons they are better is because A.J. Preller built a deeper team, a more complete team. And as he always does, he gives the Padres a competitive advantage because he is not afraid to trade prospects. And who has he brought in? Well, started with Dylan Cease, then Luis Ariz, then the relievers at the deadline, Jason Adam, Brian Hoeing, and of course, Tanner Scott. So they're in a great position. Darvish has come back now. Tatis has come back now. I don't know that they're going to win the World Series, but this is a team that has performed a lot better than last year's team, which was, by most measures, unlucky to a degree. But for whatever reason, this has been a turnaround, Scott, and Preller is the driving force behind it.
They're winning close games. They're hitting with runners in scoring position at an astronomical rate based on what it was last year. But what hasn't changed is I remember reading an article by somebody talking about how A.J. Preller was a little hands-on, and maybe that was part of the issue. Has that changed at all in this season, or is he still that? I'm not sure what was said, like a helicopter general manager like he was last year?
That, Eric, is a very good question. And you're referring to the story that Dennis Lynn and I wrote at the end of last season. We wrote another one at the end of the season before about his management style. My understanding is that it has changed a little bit, or maybe even a lot. It has improved. However, to this point, our efforts to get that story have not been successful because the Padres apparently don't want that story told, even though it's a positive story. So stay tuned.
Okay, so I've got one for you. Bob Melvin was the manager of last year's team. Now he's the manager of a Giants team that he's calling the worst year, essentially, of his major league career as a manager in his 21 seasons, which is saying a lot for Bob Melvin. For fans, they try and make it nice and simple. They're like, he was managing last year. Now he's managing the Giants this year. Giants are underperforming. Do you see any links to, I don't want to say to Bob, but more to the problems that seem to have been sparking with him and the front office last year?
Well, last year was last year. And yes, the problems between him and Preller, we documented them in that Athletic story that I referred to. There's no question there were problems. That's why he left, and A.J. Preller allowed him to leave for the Giants. Now, it is fair for fans to question the record, and Bob Melvin did a question and answer interview with Andrew Baggerly of The Athletic this week, and I encourage people to read it. He took a lot of accountability for this year, and it's not that it's all his fault. We all know it's not all his fault. They lost their center fielder. They didn't have a great offense. They were just not the team that you thought they would be. Blake Snell took a while to get going. Robbie Ray, the whole deal. We can go through that chapter and verse. But he did take responsibility for his part in this. And he said, interestingly, I thought, that he wasn't always trusting his gut because he was kind of caught in between. He's with a new team, an analytically driven team, wasn't sure kind of where to draw the line between them. So I don't know that Bob Melvin has deteriorated any as a manager. In fact, I would suggest he hasn't. And I would also suggest that people look back to 2022, which wasn't that long ago, when he led the Padres to the National League Championship Series. But clearly, he wants to make it work in San Francisco. That is, of course, where he played. It's where he grew up. It's the place where he wanted to be. And I would expect, given the turnover that likely will take place this offseason and some of the things happening there, that he'll have a better year next year than he did this year.
Ken, yes, they switched managers, but they also lost Hader, Soto, a ton of guys, Blake Snell, who we already discussed. What has changed in the Padres clubhouse? Because, yes, they've made their bullpen nasty. Like, if they get in the playoffs and they have Darvish, they have Musgrove, they have King, they have Cease going, and then you got their back into their bullpen with Adam and Scott and Suarez and all these guys in the back end. What's changed, though? Because it's going into this year, everybody said, yeah, the Padres are going to be okay, but they got rid of all this talent, and now they're better. It can't just be Mike Schilt. There had to have been a culture change. There had to have been something else. Because normally when you lose that much talent, you don't get better, you get worse, and the Padres got better.
I don't know if this is a thing or not, but a lot of those guys you just mentioned, Snell, Lugo, Waka, Hader, Nick Martinez was another one, Gary Sanchez, kind of a minor league signing, but these guys all were potential free agents last year. Juan Soto was a year away from free agency, but it obviously was still on his mind. I don't know that last year's version of Juan Soto was the best version. He got hot at the end, and his numbers were good, but it wasn't the Juan Soto we're seeing this year, not the same impact. So the question is, and you cannot define this, you can't measure it, and I don't know if it was even a factor. Was that team in a situation where too many of the players were preoccupied with their own individual circumstances? I don't know the answer to that, again, but it is a reasonable question to ask. I raised it in the article as well. It's one of these unknowables. You just don't know. But this year, the potential free agents are much lesser parts for the most part. It's Tanner Scott, it's Kyle Higashioka, it's guys who are basically role players. Profar, again, is eligible for free agency, as he was last year. So I don't know if that's part of it. I can't tell. I can't tell for sure, but it is certainly fair to ask that question and wonder the effect of having so many guys in their walk year, big players, and whether that contributed in some way to them underperforming.
We're going to shift gears to the MVP candidacies. If Bobby Witt was in the National League, just take his exact year and put it up against Ohtani right now. Does he win the National League MVP? Because we talked about the whole DH, and DHs never win, but I feel like Ohtani's season is way different than any other David Ortiz MVP seasons.
Eric, it's funny. I could act like a GM and say, listen, Eric, I'm not going to answer a hypothetical. But then AJ would get mad at me. So the question is a very good one. And Witt's season is a borderline MVP season in his league. It actually is a legitimate MVP season in his league. And I'm not convinced yet that he's not the MVP. Judge has slowed down and Witt's doing really well still. I mean, he slowed down somewhat as well. But those two players, they're much different. But Witt has had an astounding season. And MLB.com's Mike Petriello, who is one of our better writers in the industry, had an interesting column the other day in which he said Bobby Witt would be the MVP of the American League. The only reason he's not going to be the MVP is because Aaron Judge is putting up a top 10 all-time offensive season. Now, if that's how it ends, that's how it ends, and Judge is the MVP, even though Witt is superior at shortstop to Judge in center field. But that speaks to what Mike wrote, just how good Witt's season has been. For those fans of wins above replacement, it's a 10-win season. It's amazing. 10 wins is not easy to get to if you're a player. So would he beat Ohtani? I don't know. 50-50 under any circumstances, Eric, would be difficult to vote against. And people talk about, well, he's on the Dodgers. It's not that big a deal. He's got that talent around him. But when Mookie was out, he moved to leadoff and kept doing big things. In fact, did really bigger things. So I'm not sure Witt would edge him out even in that league. But Witt has had an MVP caliber season. Let's not make any mistake about it. It's that good. Defense, base running, offense, the whole works. And he has elevated a team that lost 106 games last year. Did a lot this offseason, did a lot at the deadline, kept going in August. We talked about that the other day. But he's the centerpiece of it all.
All right, this one's for the dudes. You know how scary it can get when you're going for a close shave below the belt, and that's why FT trusts Manscaped for those sensitive areas. Their newest package is the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, including the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra.
Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires.
Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 5.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Want more wet products? Say no more. Manscaped has a new buff bundle. This bundle includes their signature silicone scrubber plus body wash, so ditch your nasty loofah and grab a taste of freshness.
Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code FOUL20. Ken, did you see David's comments? I mean, we both
Yes.
we both know David. My thing is about David. He would have been fine with what he said, but he threw in the little snide name calling thing. Like, it would have been a better. I feel like it would have been a better quote if he would have said, "I never won it, but now they're going to give it to Ohtani as a DH." But instead, he had to throw in that little comment, which changed the context of it. Did you have any thoughts on that? Because I love David. I've known David since we were both like 20 years old. And I love David. I've never known him to be like this. So it kind of caught me off guard when I read these. But do you have any thoughts on why David would say such a thing?
No. And AJ, I will say the same thing you just did. It caught me off guard a little bit. It surprised me because David, the one thing he is, among other things, is very respectful of players. And he, I know, thinks Ohtani is an incredible talent, incredible player. I was with him, I don't know, right about 2 months ago when we were out, and he was talking effusively about Ohtani. So I don't know exactly the context of that interview. I didn't hear it or see it or whatever, but it surprises me that he would take even a veiled shot like that. No, Ohtani, what did he call him? The pretty boy of the league? I mean, that's not a really respectful comment, and it is unlike David to say something like that. And I'll mention this as well, and I would tell this to David if we were together right now. The difference between Ohtani and every other DH is that he's going to steal 50 bases. I don't believe David stole 50 bases. I don't believe Frank Thomas or any of the other guys who have finished high in the voting, Yordan Alvarez a couple of years ago. Those guys, great hitters, amazing. But Ohtani brings that other dimension on the bases.
2 things. He called him the pretty girl of baseball.
Okay.
And the other thing is, everybody hear that? Kenny Ballgames and Big Papi are out. They weren't just hanging it; they were hanging out outside of the game. I'm thinking it's probably in the wearing some Dior, all that
Eric,
stuff.
I have to clarify. It was a Fox dinner, so it wasn't like we were out clubbing.
All right.
Still cool, though. Still cool.
Ken, you are still cool. My last question, kind of good transition with Big Papi talk. You're doing the Yankees Red Sox game here coming up on tomorrow, correct?
Correct.
Has it lost its luster? Has the Yankees Red Sox rivalry lost its luster year after year after year, and now we're at 2024?
I would say it's not what it was certainly a few years ago when they were meeting in the playoffs and when the Red Sox were their equals, if not superiors, and superior in 2018, among other times. Right now, the Red Sox are kind of in a funny place. They're pretty good, and they're still technically in the wild card race, 4 games out, but they're not the Red Sox of Big Papi and Manny and that crowd, or even a few years ago, Chris Sale, Devers, the whole group that they had then. It's still a rivalry. It's still a big deal. There's no doubt about that. I don't know that that will ever go away, but this rivalry is at its best when both teams are powerful. And I would not call the Red Sox powerful right now. They're intriguing. And they've got the top prospect, according to Baseball America, in the game, Roman Anthony. They've got 2 other kids, Marcelo Mayer and Kyle Teal, who are coming. They should spend money this winter. We said that last winter, and do some things to make themselves better. But right now, they're not at the level of the Yankees, and that's why the rivalry does not quite feel the same.
Okay, Ken, real quick. Is that why you're not at the Rays-Cleveland rivalry tomorrow and you're a Red Sox-Yankees? If it's diminished, shouldn't you be at the other game with me? I don't understand.
AJ, here's the deal. So you can look at this hotel room. This is a really nice one. And I knew I was going to get this one. So I said, no, I'm not going with AJ, man. I'm going to New York.
Oh, okay. That's what it
Let's
was. It was a
go.
hotel room.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's these things called points programs, Ken. I know you have all your first point ever earned. You got to be upgrade eligible by now.
AJ, I do quite well with points, and my family benefits greatly from them.
Yes.
No.
There you go. I love that. Hey, he's a roving reporter. So he just happens to rove sometimes to some very nice hotel rooms that are very accommodating. Perfect way to end this.
Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.